What if you grew up speaking Mongolian instead of English? The Mongol Empire conquered more land in 25 years than Rome did in 400. 1/5 of the entire planet lived under Mongol rule, the largest contiguous land empire in human history. And then it shattered. But what if it didn't? What if Beijing invented the internet, not Silicon Valley? What if America never existed because the Mongols colonized it first, from the West? One succession dispute destroyed the largest empire in history. Let's rewrite it. Why the Mongols actually collapsed. Before we rewrite history, you need to understand why the Mongols fell apart in the first place. Genghis Khan died in 1227. His son, Ogadai, became Great Khan and continued the expansion. But when Ogadai died in 1441, everything fractured. His widow, Toragene, became regent, but rival factions formed around different potential heirs. Mongke eventually took power, but his death in 1569 triggered a full civil war between his brothers Kublai and Erik Bokeh. The Mongol Empire split into 4 khanates: the Yuan dynasty in China, the Ilkhanate in Persia, the Chagatai Khanate in Central Asia, and the Golden Horde in Russia. Each ruled independently. The unified Mongol Empire was dead. The problem wasn't military weakness. The Mongols still dominated every battlefield. The problem was succession. Genghis Khan never established a clear system for choosing the next great Khan. Every death triggered a power struggle. So here's our branch point. What if Ogadai lives 10 more years and establishes a formal succession law before he dies? What if the Kurultai, the Council of Mongol Leaders, agrees on a system where the eldest son always inherits, no debate, no civil war? One legal reform, that's all it takes, to keep the Mongol Empire unified. The Silk Road becomes permanent. When the Mongol Empire stays unified, the first thing that changes is trade. The Mongols created the Silk Road as we know it. They built roads, established rest stations every 30 miles, created a postal system that could deliver messages from Beijing to Baghdad in weeks. Under Mongol protection, merchants traveled from Europe to China safely for the first time in history. But when the Mongols fractured, the Silk Road fractured with it. Different khanates imposed different taxes. Merchants had to negotiate with 4 separate governments instead of one. Trade slowed. The greatest economic highway in human history started dying. In our timeline, the one where the Mongols stay unified, the Silk Road never dies. It expands. By 1400, Mongol-controlled trade routes stretch from London to Tokyo. Goods flow freely across the entire empire. A merchant in Venice can buy silk from China without crossing a single hostile border. The Mongols charge one unified tax, enforce one unified law, and guarantee protection across 12,000 miles. This isn't just about commerce, it's about ideas. When goods move freely, knowledge moves with them. Chinese printing technology reaches Europe a century earlier. Islamic mathematics spreads to China faster. European metallurgy techniques reach India. The Mongols don't just move products, they move innovation, and that changes everything. Baghdad survives. In 1258, the Mongols destroyed Baghdad and killed up to 1 million people. They burned the House of Wisdom, the greatest library in the world, and threw so many books into the Tigris River that the water ran black with ink. The Islamic Golden Age ended that day. But in a unified Mongol Empire, Baghdad doesn't burn. A centralized command preserves it as an administrative hub. Islamic scholars keep working. Their knowledge in mathematics, astronomy, and medicine reaches Europe decades earlier through Mongol trade routes. The Renaissance starts 50 years early. The scientific revolution accelerates, all because one library survived. Europe never dominates. Here's where things get uncomfortable for Western audiences. If the Mongol Empire stays unified, Europe never becomes the center of global power. In our timeline, Europe rose because everyone else fell. The Mongol Empire collapsed, the Islamic world fractured, China turned inward. That vacuum let small European kingdoms expand into colonial empires. But in a world where the Mongols never collapse, there is no power vacuum. When Portuguese and Spanish explorers try to sail around Africa and reach Asia in the 1400s, they're not discovering new trade routes. They're looking for alternatives to the Mongol-controlled Silk Road. In our alternate timeline, they don't need to. The Silk Road is open, safe, and efficient. There's no economic incentive to risk your life sailing into unknown oceans. Columbus might still sail west looking for a route to China, but when he lands in the Caribbean, there's no Spanish empire powerful enough to fund large-scale colonization. Spain is a middling European kingdom paying tribute to the Mongols to maintain trade access. The age of exploration either never happens or looks completely different. Instead of European colonial empires, you get Mongol client states. Instead of British merchants controlling India, Mongol governors administer it. Instead of the French and Spanish carving up the Americas, Mongol-sponsored expeditions might reach them first, from the west, across the Pacific from China. Because here's the thing about a unified Mongol Empire: China doesn't close itself off. In our timeline, the Ming dynasty overthrew the Mongols in 1368 and immediately turned inward. They banned ocean trade, destroyed the treasure fleet, and focused on defending the northern border. China went from a maritime power to an isolationist state in one generation. But if the Mongols never fall, there is no Ming dynasty. The Yuan dynasty, the Mongol rulers of China, stays in power, and the Mongols love expansion. Chinese shipbuilding technology in the 1300s was the most advanced in the world. If the Mongols stay unified and keep encouraging maritime trade, Chinese fleets might cross the Pacific by 1400. They could reach the Americas decades before Columbus. Imagine this. In 1420, a Mongol-Chinese expedition lands on the coast of California. They find the same indigenous civilizations Columbus encountered, but instead of European diseases and conquest, they establish Mongol trading posts. The Mongols don't want to exterminate natives. They want to incorporate them into the empire as taxpayers and trade partners. The Americas get absorbed into the Mongol system gradually through trade and diplomacy, not genocide and colonization. By 1500, there's a Mongol provincial capital in Mexico, maritime trade between China and Peru, and the Inca Empire paying tribute to the Great Khan. The Western Hemisphere becomes part of Asia's economic sphere, instead of Europe's colonial playground. The Industrial Revolution happens in Central Asia. Fast forward to the 1700s. In our timeline, the Industrial Revolution starts in Britain because of coal, capital, and colonial resources. But in a Mongol unified empire, Britain is an isolated island off the coast of a Mongol client state. The real economic engine is Central Asia, the heartland of the Mongol Empire where trade routes converge. The Mongols have been moving ideas across Eurasia for 500 years. When steam engine prototypes develop in China, Mongol engineers in Samarkand improve them. When European metallurgy advances, the knowledge flows east immediately. There's no technological isolation because the Mongol Empire connects everything. The first factories might appear in Bukhara or Kashgar instead of Manchester. Industrialization spreads along the Silk Road instead of European colonial networks. By 1800, the most technologically advanced cities on Earth are in Central Asia, not Western Europe. And that means the global power center never shifts to the West. So, what does the modern world look like if the Mongol Empire never collapsed? Language? English isn't the global language. Mongolian or a Turkic-Mongolian hybrid dominates international business and diplomacy. Chinese has equal standing. European languages are regional, like Swedish or Hungarian today. Borders? Russia doesn't exist as we know it. The territory is divided into Mongol administrative regions. The United States might not exist either. The Americas were colonized from the west by Mongol-Chinese expeditions, not from the east by Europeans. Religion? Christianity is a regional European religion, not a global force. Islam and Buddhism spread farther under Mongol protection. Tengriism, the Mongol sky religion, might still have millions of followers. The world is more religiously diverse because no single faith dominated colonial expansion. Technology, the internet gets invented in Beijing or Almaty, not Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley is a rice farming region. The global tech industry speaks Mandarin and Mongolian. Culture, your favorite foods, music, and art look completely different. Instead of Western pop culture dominating, you grow up watching Mongolian cinema, listening to Central Asian music, and eating fusion cuisine that blends Chinese, Persian, and Indian flavors as the default. You might live in the same geographic location, but your language, culture, and worldview are shaped by a Eurasian empire instead of Western civilization. The Mongol Empire collapsed because of succession disputes. One legal reform could have kept it together, and if it had, you'd live in a more unified world, but a more controlled one too.